Hi, I'm Thomas the Accidental DM, and today we're getting into session 2 of Alone Against the Tide, a solitary adventure for the Call of Cthulhu game. And I'm playing then the character that's pre-generated by the name of Ellery Woods. And so just a bit of a recap from Ellery Woods' perspective. Strangest thing. I was sent to do a simple job of merely picking up the work of my colleague at Miskatonic University, Professor Harris, to go to his home. And that's where things started to take a little bit of a twist that I wouldn't necessarily expected. I arrived, and the first thing I notice is that they seem to be auctioning off the works of Dr. Harris, which is I was a bit concerned, and the police didn't seem to be anyone to be able to kind of help out much of that either. But I went to the auction to see if I could salvage anything. There were several pieces that I thought were quite odd. But the thing then that I did decide to pick up that I was unfortunately, the only thing I was able to pick up, though, were his notes, which I figured was within my purview. And then I decided it was after that to kind of take a rest. And now then, it's the next morning, and maybe I should be able to go have a little bit of a better conversation with Dr. Harris's widow. And so where we left off, it was kind of the beginning of the morning, and we are now at number 106. After getting dressed and eating the modest breakfast set out for you, you're ready to begin your day. Take a moment to consider what that means for you. Your mind turns to Professor Harris. If you're so inclined, you might be able to investigate the circumstances of his death further. Considering that you don't have his widow Amelia's address, you would have to start your search with the official report filed with Officer Powell at the police station. Alternatively, you could take this free time to look through your belongings and examine any items you might have. The hotel owner has been in your room, so a check of your things might be in order. Or perhaps you have some reason to look over your possessions. Finally, if you feel that your business in Esbury is concluded, you can always try to find Lance Sanford at the ferry. Okay, and so we're given a couple of options then to choose from. We can either go to the police station, obviously to talk to Officer Powell about the death of Professor Harris, or we can look through our own things. I think given the importance then of his manuscript that he's been working on for over a year, he's probably mostly interested in making sure that his stuff is there and then maybe kind of delving in a little bit more into what happened to Professor Harris. So we'll go to number 32 to begin with. Cursory inspection of your belongings reveals that nothing is amiss. All your possessions are just as you left them. While you are here looking things over, you can take this opportunity to more closely scrutinize items bought at the estate sale, looking, in our case, over the manuscript that we had purchased yesterday evening at the estate sale, or going then to the police station or to the ferry. Let's take a look then at the journal that we picked up. So we want to go to number 74. Though you glanced at the notebook during the estate sale, you haven't had time to properly look at it until now. Reading through the book, you become deeply engrossed and spend the next few hours in study. The time spent yields valuable information. Professor Harris made several trips to India starting about 12 years ago. During these visits, he went to multiple sites to make observation and recover artifacts. His longest and most profitable trip appears to have been 10 years ago during an excursion to Sarnath, India, where he writes about recovering several items from an active Buddhist shrine. Apparently, Professor Harris had some regrets about his theft, but he couldn't resist taking the artifacts for his personal collection. The description of the items he came across in Sarnath matched some of the items at the estate sale last night. That would explain then the monk's interest in some of the items, possibly. The clay cylinders, the gemstone-encrusted altar, and the lizard-like idol all described in detail in the entries related to his trip to Sarnath. These same items then appear throughout the rest of his journal. He'd clearly been studying them over the past decade, developing something of a fixation with them. It was the idol that initially caught Harris's eye, and according to him, the depiction of the great and grotesque water lizard matched no description of any known Hindu deity. Hoping to find clues to the idol's identity, Harris set about trying to translate the mysterious script on the cylinders and the altar. In doing so, he met with significant difficulty, as the text was only barely recognizable as an archaic dialect of a pre-Sanskrit language. The process was slow and painstaking until about a year ago. At this time, Professor Harris writes of having a strange and enlightening dream. He reports walking in the ancient world from whence these items originated, a grand city of marble walls and onyx streets, of bronze gates and marvelous palaces and gardens. He writes of visiting the 17-tower temples of this ancient city and meeting the bearded gods who dwelled there, sat upon their ivory thrones. Harris calls the strange place Sarnath, despite the sheer impossibility of this. He claims that among the temples he learned the secret of the ancient writing. Okay, I think that Professor Woods, Dr. Woods, is starting to think his colleague, Professor Harris, might be getting a little long in the tooth, or maybe his age is kind of catching up with him. His next entry goes on to describe the old clay cylinders as the brick cylinders of Katatheron, though he hadn't yet identified the other objects. The next few pages have been torn from the journal. The entries resume with more mundane matters, though there are still references to the artifacts from time to time. The most recent entries in the journal speaks of Harris's daily studies and living with Amelia. It's clear that he cared about her deeply from the way he writes about her, but he laments that his studies keep him from spending the time with her that he would like. Instead, he lavished her with gifts and money, which she was all too happy to accept. He notes that Amelia had never been happier despite the distance between them. The last entry to catch her eyes dated a little over a week ago. Apparently the pages torn from his journal went missing only recently. Professor Harris expresses deep concern as there were no signs of forced entry to his study, and only he and Amelia had access to it, though he was sure he hadn't moved them from the journal himself. You finish your reading by glossing over the last week of the professor's life, which is rather uneventful and peaceful beyond his continued obsession with the artifacts and his occasional worries about Amelia. Go now to number 32. All right, and again, we're left with, we don't have any more of the estate sale items to look at specifically. We can either go to the police station or we can go to the ferry. I think that Dr. Woods is wanting a little bit more information because he thinks there still might be some things that belong to the work that Professor Harris had that he needs to kind of be able to recover. And so I think at this point his best bet is to go to the police station and talk to the good officer, despite the rocky discussion that he had with him last night. So we'll go to the police station, number 11. You step out into the greenish mist. You feel it clinging tightly to you as you make your way the short distance to the police station. Upon entering the small brick building, you are struck with a sense of claustrophobia. The walls here are uncomfortably close together and the space is tight. Crammed into the tiny structure are a large desk, several filing cabinets, and a few chairs. A closet-sized holding cell with iron bars sits at the rear of the room. Behind the large desk is Officer Powell, smoking a cigar with his feet propped up on the table. His coat is unbuttoned and his hat lies on top of a stack of papers next to a battered old revolver. Quite a picture that Officer Powell is painting for us. He opens one eye and frowns at you, sighing through his cigar as he straightens himself up to look presentable. If you're bothering me right now, I'm going to assume this is important. You mentioned that you would like to see the police report for Professor William Harris's death, to which he replies with a snort, you have no business dealing with that, and even if you did, this is my jurisdiction. Shove off and leave me in peace. He doesn't seem cooperative, but perhaps you could convince him that you might have some special circumstance that warrant you looking through this file. Okay, and so we're giving them the opportunity to make a fast talk roll. And so let's see what happens when we make our fast talk roll. We get a 36, which in this particular case is a failure. That's where we're starting off today with the good doc. So if you fail, go to 101. We have not had good luck with Officer Powell at all. You try to convince the officer that you have a particularly good reason for needing access to the file, but he simply doesn't care. Scram, stranger, you're ruining my smoke. If you want to dig at the dead guy, go bother his widow. Her place is over on the north side of town, right next to the church. Can't damn well miss it. Officer Powell will be of no more help at this time. So we can either go find Harris, go find the Harris house, or we can return to the hotel. Well, we need some leads, and we wanted to go to the Harris home, so we've got where we're supposed to go. So we will now go to number 90. You walk into town toward the Harris address. Even knowing the location is difficult, you find your way due to your unfamiliarity with the town and the density of the peculiar green mist. As a result, it's some time before you arrive at the Harris house. As you approach the building, a man steps out of the fog, blocking your path. He is young and thin, with rather angular features and the faint hint of a mustache atop his lip. He's dressed in a dark suit and stares at you from beneath a flat cap. "You're an unwelcome surprise. I don't know what you're looking for, but you won't find it here." Your eyes betray you as you glance at the Harris house. The man scowls visibly. "Why don't you leave the poor widow alone, you creep? You want to bother her, you're going to have to go through old Joshua here, capiche?" His hand brushes beneath his coat as if searching for something, but then he stops himself. He pauses for a moment, looking you over once more before spitting on the ground at your feet and turning away. We're given the option then to call out Joshua. I don't think an academic of, well, wait a second, but Dr. Woods is an old hat from his gang in Boston, so he's not your typical leave me alone type of guy either. Or we could try to make our way to the Harris house, or to heed his warning and return to the hotel. I think that Dr. Woods, remembering his kind of background in Boston, he's going to call out Joshua, so we want to go to 5. This might not turn out well, but I think this fits in with the character. You call out Joshua to explain himself, half expecting he'll simply brush you off. Surprisingly, he turns in your direction and steps toward you. As Joshua moves closer to you, you can once again make out his features despite the fog. You see now that he is visibly red in the face and his eyes are bloodshot. He is clearly livid. His hand darts beneath his coat and reemerges holding a Colt M1911, which he points directly at you while speaking in an agitated manner. "What the hell is your problem? I threaten you and you come back for more. You have a death wish? Leave Amelia alone. I've been about this for far too long for you to wander into town and ruin it for me." He shoves you back and levels the gun at your face, looking you dead in the eye with sweat on his brow. He grits his teeth, panting and huffing for a second before holstering the gun, bracing himself against a nearby building. "Get the hell out of town. If I have to look at that goddamn face of yours one more second, I'll put another hole in it." You see no reason to further provoke Joshua, and you hurriedly leave him where he is. So we can press on to the Harris house, or we can feel this investigation is not worth the risk and return to the hotel. He has a job to do, and Dr. Woods knows how to take care of himself. So we won't antagonize Joshua, but we will press on to the Harris house, so we will go to number 55. Despite Joshua's urgings, you feel compelled to speak to Amelia yourself. You approach the front of the house and note your surroundings. The house's exterior hints at the wealth of the occupants, but then again, so do most places in town. Directly across from the residence is a small church whose religious iconography seems to have inspired the Harrises in the design of their home. A bronze cross hangs over the front door, and decorative columns line the outside walls of the 2-story house. All in all, the architectural style is somewhat Baroque, complete with a pair of carved angels lounging beneath the eaves that are just visible through the strange haze. You knock on the door and wait in the midst for a few moments before hoping for someone to hear you. Eventually, much to your relief, the widow Amelia answers the door. She's wearing a bright red dress which accents her deep crimson lipstick. She appears to have taken great care over her appearance. She flashes you a smile and invites you inside. The house opens into a large foyer, and you see various crates and bundles stacked high along the walls. Just selling off a few of the more common things. Mind the mess. The porter hasn't come for it yet. She takes you by the hand to lead you past the stacks of items, helping you to pick your way through the deceased Professor Harris's assembled possessions. She takes you into a small drawing room full of antique furniture and offers you some coffee. After settling in, exchanging a few well-mannered pleasantries, you ask in more detail about the late Professor Harris. Amelia sighs theatrically and looks down at her hands. "I can't imagine what you want to ask about William. I found him in his study with the gun still in his mouth. What more could you want to know?" And so we're asked then to make a psychology roll. So we will do that real quick and see what we get. We get a 3. Okay, so that more than likely is going to be successful. I'm just going to confirm it. Psychology is a 50, so that is a success. So we want to go to 126. You don't know why you hadn't realized it before. Selling all these things, adopting such a flirty demeanor, dismissing questions about her husband's death. Amelia doesn't seem too broken up about her husband's passing. She's hiding something. You'd bet your career on it. You suspect she's involved in Professor Harris's death in some form or another. You open your mouth to prepare to call her bluff and press for more information, but you are interrupted by a loud knock at the door. Amelia jumps up, startled, and stands there for a moment in confusion as the pounding on the door resumes. "Police, open the door!" Amelia's face drains white as she goes to answer the knock. Your gut tells you something is wrong here. You feel uneasy about the officer at the door. You tell yourself you're being irrational on the edge, but you have some trouble fighting the feeling. You have a few precious moments to react. We can either ignore the instincts and wait, or take this chance to make a stealth roll. We don't have good relations with Officer Powell, so let's try to make a stealth roll and see what happens, shall we? Which is a 27. That's a possibility. That's a stealth of 20. How much luck do we have? We have 60 points of luck. I am going to spend the 7 points in order to make that a success. So we go from 60 down to 53. All right, so we do succeed at our stealth, so we want to go to number 98. Your hunches are never wrong. Whatever the officer's here for, you don't want any part of it. Glancing around, you weigh your options. You decide to creep towards Amelia and Officer Powell, positioning yourself behind a stack of items that are waiting for the porter. Neither of them seems to notice you as they rush past your hiding place, giving you a clear line to the door. Alternatively, now might be a good time to explore the house. While there is the risk of discovery, it's not as if you have anything to lose by snooping around somewhere you weren't supposed to be. For a brief moment, your gaze wanders to the staircase opposite the entryway. The bedrooms and study are likely up there, and you might be able to find some valuable information. So we're given the option of either escaping or up the stairs. Dr. Woods definitely is going to go up the stairs, so we go down to 110. You turn your attention to a set of stairs opposite the entrance. You ascend the staircase and see two doors, one to either side of you. The door to your left is slightly ajar and no doubt leads to the bedroom. By a process of elimination, the door to your right must lead to the study. It seems to be locked and you don't have a key. With enough time, you might be able to get the door open, but it would probably be unwise to spend too long trying, since someone might come to investigate. So then our options then are to try to enter the bedroom. To try to enter the study, we would need to make a locksmith roll. Okay, and I think with the shady past of Dr. Woods, let me just take a look to see what his locksmith is. Yes, he is definitely going to try to enter into the study, and so let's see how we do. 97. Oh, okay, he had a 50-50 and he fails it miserably. If you fail this roll, you may attempt to push it and roll again, but if you fail a second time, there'll be a greater consequence. So we are given then the potential to try to push the roll. It's a 50-50. Let's push it. What the heck? Why not? 69. With a 50-50, and both times we don't get it. I'm not going to spend 19 luck in order to make a success. So if we fail, we go to number 87. So we put our arm to it, and nothing happens. So we now go to 87. You carry a bobby pin on you for just such an occasion, because of course Dr. Woods does. You fumble with the lock for quite some time, trying to force the tumblers into place. Despite your best efforts, the lock is stubborn and unwilling to move. As you contemplate giving up on the lock and trying to break the door down, the front door of the house flies open, rattling on its hinges. Go to 140. You turn around and leave the door closed behind you. Looking down the stairs, you realize you are not alone. Dominating the entryway is Joshua, red-faced and furious. He has a gun, which he quickly aims in your direction. You have just a second to hit the ground before he pulls the trigger. Perhaps your reflexes are quick enough so we can make a dodge roll. All right, so that is definitely something we will attempt to do, is make a dodge, and that is a 70, which I'm 70% sure that that is not going to work because my dex is a 50. So yes, that is definitely a fail. If you see, go to 132. If you fail, take 1d10 plus 2 damage. Okay, so we're going to take 1d10 plus 2 damage. There's a good chance we might not survive this. So 1d10 plus 2, add that into the modifier, and we come up with 10 points. We had 11 points. Yes. Yeah, that's not good. But we have a single hit point left. So I mean that is definitely a major wound. Okay. So we've been hit then with this major wound. So our next thing is we need to try to make a con roll to see if we can at least stay conscious. So let's see what happens when we do that. My con is a 60, so it's a good chance. Whew. All right, we are extremely hurt, but somehow we are still around. So if we survive, we go to 96. Ooh, but I am not good. Joshua aims the gun at you and you freeze in shock. The weapon goes off in his hand and the bullet whizzes through the air, tearing open your left shoulder and throwing you back up against the wall. You collapse in a heap, blood oozing from your wound. You know it isn't fatal, but that doesn't make the pain any less. As you struggle to fight through that pain, you find Joshua standing over you. The look on his face is one of pure rage. It's the last thing as you see as you are clubbed into unconsciousness. Go to 138. Not Dr. Woods' day. You awake, stripped of any weapons, didn't have any, and tied to a chair in a dusty basement. The first thing you notice is the pain from your wounds. They are still fresh and have not been tended to in any way. The second thing you notice is the table across from you with a strange collection of items. A pair of cracked clay cylinders, a gemstone-studded altar with curious scrawls, a stack of papers, and an unnatural-looking idol of sea green stone fashioned in the shape of a lizard-like creature. Standing next to the table is a man that you can't quite make out in the dimness of the room. He puffs absently at a cigar as he stares at you. I might have a clue who this is. Behind the table still and other bootlegging equipment. You turn your head to see one of the suited men from before leaning against the door, sipping from a flask. When you begin to move, the unknown man walks over to you. He grins widely, and you spot a glint of madness in his eyes. He hovers at the edge of the illuminated area. He produces a knife from his pocket, and the blade catches the glimmer of the dim bulb flickering above. The stranger shoots a glance at the suited man by the door, who nods and then leaves. The remaining man comes to the light and presses the knife against your neck. It digs into the flesh, nicking you and drawing a drop of blood on the tip. Thought you could cause trouble for Josh, eh? I'm going to enjoy this, getting rid of my little problem. Everything was fine until you started snooping around. You're putting me and Amelia both in danger here, and you're getting in the way of my plans. So I'm going to enjoy tearing open your throat and offering it of your life to that idol. Perhaps it will please him, and then I'll get what I want. I'll finally make it my way to that beautiful place I've seen in my dreams. It will be over soon. I will bleed you slow because I want to enjoy this. He takes the knife and presses it deeper. You struggle reflexively against your bonds, trying to escape the pain. Perhaps if you struggle hard enough, you can break free. We make a strength roll. 40. That might work. Strength is a 50. Yes, okay. If you succeed, go to 115. You struggle against your bonds as you begin to panic. Mercifully, they give way. Joshua is shocked by the sound of net snapping the rope across, echoing off the walls, and he jumps away from you on pure reflex. You act on instinct. Without thinking, you rush toward him, attempting to wrestle the knife from his grasp. You know that you need to be the one in control of the weapon if you're going to survive this, especially as there's another armed man just outside the door. You grasp Joshua's forearm, preventing him from attacking you with his knife. You then try to pry it from his hand even as you jab and strike at him with knees and elbows, hoping desperately you can snatch the blade from his grip. So we give the opportunity then of making a fighting brawl. All right. Okay, let's see how we do here. It's a 94. Yeah, our fighting brawl is not going to be that high, I'm pretty sure. 45, no. So if you fail, go to 180. Try as you might, you're unable to pry the blade from Joshua's grasp. You manage to land a single solid punch in your face that sends you reeling backwards. In a moment, he's on top of you. Joshua locks eyes with you, smiling with wicked glee as he rests the cold metal slightly against your throat, and his eyes glaze over as he begins speaking his strange tongue. He speaks each syllable in a slow and monotonous tone, as if he's focusing very carefully on the sound of the words. At the last syllable passes his lips, Joshua takes his knife and presses it sharply against your neck. With a single smooth motion, he slits your throat. As you bleed out, your eyes perceive impossible visions. The world melts away, replaced by a shiny city of marble, onyx, and luxurious gems. You see the magnificent city in all its splendor, sitting next to a placid lake. And then in an instant, it's gone, as the water rises up to swallow it. The lizard thing of the idol, given life and power by your blood, surges up from the water. The being eyes you with malicious sentience as the waters swell and consume you. We've been offered to a great old one. Our visit to Esbury is ended. So that was definitely one way of ending then, Alone Against the Tide. This is, I think, a story I will want to kind of revisit in the future, not right away, but it will be one I want to take a look at again. And if you're interested in following along with other solo gameplays that I'll do, or with some of the other discussions that I have about various other TTRPGs, please consider subscribing, sharing this video, liking this video. If you have any questions, comments, or things that you want to see in the future, please put them down in the comments below. I'm Thomas, the Accidental DM, and thanks for joining me.